Okay, so picture this. It's 1890. The world is in total flux. The great empires of old, they're starting to show some serious cracks. New technology is making the oceans feel smaller and smaller. And right in the middle of it all, you've got America, this kind of sleeping giant, not really sure what its place in the world is. The whole global system was on the verge of a reset. And into this chaos steps one man, a naval captain, with this incredibly radical vision that would either launch America into greatness or, well, lead it down a much more complicated path of imperial conflict.
And that man was Captain Alfred Thayer Mahan. With these words, he wasn't just making an observation. He was basically sounding a five-alarm fire. He saw something that almost nobody else did, that the quiet era of American isolation, it was over. A new age of global power was dawning, and America had better get ready for it.
So what exactly was Mahan seeing when he looked out at the world? Well, in a word, chaos. You had these ancient empires like Spain that were just crumbling after centuries of rule. And at the same time, you had new, hungry powers scrambling to grab their piece of the global pie. And America, this rising industrial powerhouse, had a choice: get in the game or risk getting left in the dust.
Now, up until this point, America's whole foreign policy was pretty simple. Stay out of it. Yeah, mind our own business, avoid all of Europe's endless drama, and just focus on building things up at home. This wasn't just a policy, it was pretty much baked into the American identity.
This idea was so common, so accepted, that a French admiral actually told Mahan that America was perfectly safe over there in its little corner, and that it really didn't need a big military. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. That's what most Americans, and the world, thought too. But Mahan, he believed this cozy little corner was a complete and dangerous illusion.
For Mahan, that illusion was about to be shattered by one single thing: a canal. He saw that a new canal through Central America, what we now know as the Panama Canal, was inevitable. And that canal would create a global superhighway for trade running right past America's front door. All of a sudden, all the world's commercial interests and all their rivalries would be sailing right by. That little corner was about to become the world's busiest intersection.
And this really boils it down to two totally different futures for the country. The old America was defensive. It looked inward. One leader at the time summed it up as, manufacture only what we can consume. But Mahan's vision? It was the polar opposite. It was offensive. It was about looking outward. And, in his own words, it was about getting out there and invading the markets of the world. I mean, that's a revolutionary way of thinking for the time.
Okay, so how on earth was America supposed to do this? Well, Mahan had an answer. And it was an idea so powerful it would go on to inspire everyone from Teddy Roosevelt to Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm. He called it sea power.
Now, for Mahan, sea power wasn't just about having a bunch of big, impressive battleships. Not at all. It was a whole interconnected system. You can think of it like a giant engine for global influence, built on a foundation of both economic and military strength that you project across the oceans. It's the whole shebang.
He broke it down into 4 essential pillars, and each one builds on the last. First, you need a buzzing economy that's producing a ton of stuff to sell. Second, you need your own fleet of merchant ships to actually carry all those goods around the world. Third, and this is key, you need overseas bases where those ships can refuel and get repairs. And finally, number 4, you need a powerful navy to protect that entire system. If you take away even one of those pillars, the whole thing just falls apart. And here's the kicker for Mahan. This wasn't about glory or just conquering territory for the sake of it. In his mind, it was about pure survival. He looked at the world, saw all these hungry, competing empires, and basically said, look, in this world, standing still is the same as moving backward. If America didn't project its power out, other nations would be more than happy to carve up the world and leave it with nothing.
Mahan published all these ideas back in 1890, and at the time they seemed pretty abstract, maybe even a little crazy. But what happened next was just extraordinary. The decade that followed would see his theories crash into reality with stunning speed. His prophecies were fulfilled in ways that probably even he couldn't have imagined.
Mahan himself called it a rude awakening. It was like one international crisis after another just popped up, forcing America to stop looking at its feet and start looking at the world around it. The age of the little corner was officially over.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It is wild how fast this happens. It all starts with Mahan's article in 1890. Just 3 years later, you've got a crisis over annexing Hawaii that forces a massive national debate on expansion. The very next year, the Sino-Japanese War shows that Japan is a new, serious naval power in the Pacific. And it all culminates in 1898 with the Spanish-American War, which basically turns the United States into a colonial empire, almost overnight.
Mahan, looking back on this decade,
was just astonished at the pace of it all. He wrote that his ideas, what he once called his visions, had become, in less than 10 years, just matters of course. The radical had somehow become the new normal.
So, what were the consequences of this sudden, massive transformation? Well, the United States now had an empire. And with that empire came a whole new set of global burdens and responsibilities that were going to fundamentally change the country, forever.
And listen, this wasn't just some theory anymore. Suddenly, America was responsible for Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and all the way across the world, the Philippines. These weren't just dots on a map. They were millions of people, thousands of miles from home, pulling the nation right into the middle of the global conflicts it had spent an entire century trying to avoid.
But for Mahan, the most important part wasn't the new land. He saw this as something much deeper, a profound, almost spiritual conversion for the nation. He called it a new birth, one that forced an expansion of political thought. America had to stop thinking of itself as this isolated little republic and start thinking like a true global power.
And this realization led to his final, absolutely crucial insight. With new possessions like Hawaii and the Philippines, America's strategic focus had shifted permanently. The Atlantic, he argued, was the past. The Pacific Ocean and the future of Eastern Asia. That was now the central stage where America's destiny was going to play out.
Mahan's ideas literally created the blueprint for America's rise as a global superpower. His vision of sea power dominated American strategy for 100 years, but it also put the nation on a permanent path of global involvement and intervention. Which brings us to a question we're still grappling with today. Looking at the world around us now, over a century later, where has the path he charted truly led us?